Laura, welcome. Talk to me, if you would, about Streetlife's role in creating sustainable cities.
Sure. I mean, there's some pretty shocking stats in that half of humanity lives in cities and 70% emissions come from urban areas. And we're experiencing the negative consequences of that today, right? So we're in LA today, which has had atmospheric rivers, right? There have been extreme heat waves in parts of the world like Mumbai, right? And so we're starting to see that. And at the same time, the resources to solve this problem exist in cities, right? We have incredible financial institutions, corporate players, startups, others. And so it really can come together in this kind of densest parts of humanity. And so at Streetlife, we focus at this intersection of cities and climate and focus on 5 key sectors within that. So that's mobility and logistics, buildings, energy, waste and water, and adaptation, all focus on the largest drivers of emissions and the largest drivers of risk. And we're not a firm that's looking as much on the kind of lab and science scale. We're really looking at things that are going to have a tangible impact the next 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Could you explain to me a little bit more about how you're doing that?
Yeah, of course. So we invest at the pre-seed and seed stage level in companies that are selling B2B, so business to business. And just maybe a couple examples of the types of sectors that we look at. I mentioned those 5. One to call out that's interesting, and there might be another too, is buildings, where we see in dense urban areas something like 60 to 70% of emissions coming from. And when you look at, the largest driver in developed economies, that's really retrofitting the existing building stock that we have today. And that comes down to basically 4 main systems in buildings that we really need to be thinking about if we want to drive the most amount of impact. And so multifamily, that can be heating and cooling systems, right? It can be water heating, ventilation, right? These core areas. And what we see for a lot of these retrofits is that it isn't always about taking out the entirety of the system, but making the systems that we have today more efficient. And so, for example, you can get what we like to call co-benefits, right? So there's technologies that will help with indoor air quality, right? Which has become a concern and even more top of mind given COVID, while also reducing the amount of energy that needs to be taken from outside air. And you can reduce the amount of energy you're using by 40%. So that's a great example. Another really interesting example of co-benefits is thinking about the intersection of energy and adaptation. The US is unfortunately winning in an area that we would not want it to right now, and that we have the largest number of electricity outages on a per capita basis of any developed country globally. And that leads to hugely negative consequences when we think about GDP, social impacts, and others. And so really are interested in companies that are solving for that stability problem and helping infrastructure companies like utilities make better decisions about how they're planning for that CapEx.
What do you see the role of smart technology and sustainable transformation playing?
Yeah, I mean, so many, right? So that buildings example that I gave earlier, a company like Carbon Reform is doing exactly that, right? They're increasing air quality internally, and then they're reducing the amount of energy that's required. When you're looking at that intersection of energy and adaptation, there's a great company called Rhizome that is mapping out climate risk that exists today, and then mapping infrastructure assets onto that and making very clear CapEx planning decisions related to that, which is hugely critically important, right? Because so many companies are making, in example, the utility sector, $50 billion of CapEx decisions per year, but not knowing what to do, how to plan for that, how to think about, these kinds of decisions in a more difficult future, and lots of other examples to give there too.
Finally, where are we on our journey to sustainable cities?
Yeah, we still have a long way to go. Yeah, and I think the exciting thing about that to me right now, though, is that we have started to see this emergence, right, of climate finance and private sector getting really involved, because it's one of the critical moments in human history, generational history, where we're seeing this ability to create impact coincide with the ability to create incredible financial returns, right? And so we're likely going to see about $5 trillion come into the economy to generate kind of this net zero transition. And a lot of that is going to go to the densest areas of humanity that are generating the largest amount of risk in our cities and neighborhoods. So really excited to see that come to life. And we're looking at and investing in the technologies that are driving that future.
Laura, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.